Hey guys, this is Shane Guns with 365 Radio Network, and I'm on the phone today with Slaayde. What's up, man?
Hey, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
Well, as good as can be expected, I guess, considering the fact that we just got over a day of snow up here. So,
Right,
springtime snow and a lot of colds.
right, exactly. So, um, I was introduced to you by the other DJ, Colleen Dana from Ireland. She
Oh yeah.
she passed me along the track of "In for the Kill," and I was really impressed with the track. And
Thank you.
like the style. I love the tempo of the song. It's upbeat. It's kind of that feel good rock and roll.
Old school.
Old school, right?
Old school. You got it.
So speaking of old school, what are some of your influences as a guitarist?
Geez, as a guitarist, well, let's see. My obvious influence has been for a long time Jimmy Page. I grew up listening to Jimmy Page, Joe Perry. Um, then I moved into Deep Purple and Blackmore. And I had a band when I was younger, and we really focused on those types of songs,
Right.
which I actually played bass in at that time. So it was kind of interesting twist.
Awesome. That's pretty cool. So I know with the current project that you have now, which is Slaayde, how did that come to be?
Well, as you know, that's my name, first of all, without the second A. So I decided to kind of revisit the original drive again. A number of years ago, we had a couple of bands that were all original, and we tried to take that to the next level. Got some financing and got into a studio. Got some interest from Polygram, and well, when that happened, we kind of looked at the contract and said, "Yeah, no."
Right.
The old staff contracts, before the huge bust in the internet and online music and streaming and those types of things, the record companies really wanted to, kind of take advantage, if you would.
Right.
But, it was just too deep, and we decided against it, and stayed original and kind of stayed local for a while. That led into a whole bunch of other issues that took place, which kind of led to the demise of the band, which was a couple of members who passed.
Right.
One of them, had a drunk driving accident. The other one, motorcycle accident. A year later. So I kind of lost all ambition, if you would.
Right. Right.
And decided to kind of quit. I actually sold everything I owned.
Well.
For about I don't know, 5-6 years. I didn't play at all. And I had an acoustic and stuff, and I would get the ish now and then, but it was just, the wounds were too deep,
Right.
So it took a while, but I decided to, pull the bootstraps up and kind of invest everything that I had into my own gig, which is what you hear now.
Right. Right. Exactly. Well, I know when I first heard "In for the Kill," and we'll go into that more here, in a little while. But when I first heard that song, it brought me back to, and I don't like to compare bands to bands, but it brought me back to early, the early '80s rock and roll, late '70s. Just the blistering riffs and the real upbeat rhythm and everything of that sort. So that's what really attracted me.
Right. And that's what attracts me too.
Right.
I miss it. I mean, I miss that type of sound. I still go back and listen to old Who and nothing like Zeppelin too, right? I mean,
Right. Exactly.
You want to slap set headphones on, listen to that for a while, and listen to it on vinyl, that type of thing. I mean, you listen to those sounds compared to what you hear today, and don't get me wrong. I mean, I'll sit down and listen to Lamb of God all day too.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that's where I kind of got the fusion drive, if you would, to kind of merge the two,
Right.
Or make the attempt, try to get that old school lead style melodic rock along with that driving, heavy, chugging type of sound,
Right.
Try to put it together. It's still a work in progress, I mean, still trying to get that little bit of prog in there too. That yes type of or rush moving forward type of thing.
Right.
The progressive style, along with those styles, it's a difficult task, and I struggle. I struggle a lot when it comes to writing.
Right.
You sit down for 3 hours and you go, is that going to work? And you lay it down and you say, okay, well, maybe not. Well, let's change this.
Right.
And you just keep experimenting. Ultimately, something's got to come out of it that's going to be halfway decent, and if not, not good.
Right. Exactly.
So,
well, and another thing that attracted me to your music was the fact that it is different than a lot of things that are out there today.
well, thanks. That's saying something.
Right.
Appreciate that.
Well, you're quite welcome. And the reason why it attracted me so much is because, of course, I'm a metal fan, a huge metal fan, but sometimes you just you can't be one directional.
Right.
You have to be multifaceted in your listening adventures. And, I like the old, late 70s or, late 60s and early 80s stuff. I like all that stuff. And that's what.
And you're hearing a lot of that today, too.
Right.
I mean, a lot of the newer underground bands are really pulling out that sound right out. They're just pulling it right out of the closet and going, "Hey, listen to this," and everybody's going, "Wow, that's new and different." Well, it's not really, but
right.
it's good. It's people are starving for it, as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
I have a number of confidants, if for lack of a better term, that are the people that get to hear anything that prior to any release or even during mix downs and that type of thing. I bring them in and say, okay, what do you think? And I want to hear, well, this sucks and don't do that, and that's really good, and so on and so forth. I mean, that's the only way I drive my direction, really.
Right.
It's important to me. I mean, I'm not a one, I'm stereo. I'm not just a mono person, I guess you could say.
Right, exactly. Because a lot of the kids today, and when I say kids, anywhere from the age of 14 to 18, they don't know necessarily what that sound is unless their mom and dad introduced them to that stuff. I mean, like
you got it, yeah.
And
that's key. That's key too. Passing the baton is a cool thing.
Right.
But they still, I'm sure a lot of people are very eclectic and they like to have a variation of sounds, and a lot of that depends on mood, right?
Right.
So,
exactly.
And what I'm trying to do with Slaayde is just that. The first album, the way it's going to be comprised, if you've noticed, I've released 5 singles this year.
Right.
And out of those 5 singles, there's a multitude of styles.
Right.
And if you really delve into each one, you begin to uncover kind of a journey, which I have a thing that I call the Slaayde's Metallurgical Land of Song.
Right.
And, it's a place where you go to get away from the world,
right.
as far as I'm concerned, that's where I go, right?
Right.
So I'm on a journey, and I'm taking people through a journey of kind of, I want to say my life, but to a degree, it's a lot of people's lives.
Right.
Things that you've enjoyed, things that you've endured, things that you've suffered through, things to come. So that's kind of, it plays against the good and the evil. Which is kind of the story that's unfolding in the 5 singles.
Right. Well, speaking of that, like I said, we mentioned "In for the Kill." I want to go into that song, how it came to be, the meaning for you behind the song, and let's just talk about that song.
Okay. All right. So "In for the Kill," actually written about 8 years ago, with a little bit of a different style. And it's a story about somebody, as you know, it starts off, you never know how far I've come to reach the edge,
Right.
it kind of hit me. There was a lot of things going on in the world that, people were just snapping left and right, man. It was incredible.
Right.
And we've all gone through it. I mean, we've all come to things where we just want to go, what the hell?
Right.
So it's about that, and it's about kind of the dark side of everything. If you look at Believe in Me, and not to go back to that, but Believe in Me kind of lends itself to leading into the Kill, because you start off believing one thing, and then you realize it's something else,
Right.
and then you don't know what to believe,
Right.
right? So then you get into, okay, now I've had enough,
Right.
right? And I've taken all this heat, which is where the only heat comes from, and now I'm just ready to snap. So I'm going into the kill,
Right.
and it has a kind of a double meaning too. I mean, it was really a lot to do with the wars that were going on,
Right.
and when you think about look to the sky, so sublime.
Right.
Yeah, it's a beautiful sky, but it's coming down on you, Um,
Right.
and that's kind of where the chorus got developed, and that whole good and evil thing
Right.
really festered in that lyric.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed the whole good and evil, twist throughout the song, and
Yeah,
if you really listen to the lyrics, you take a hold of them, and you can really feel that some of that applies to you if you really listen.
yep, yep, it does. It does. And I think a lot of people can relate to that too. I mean, everybody's had their breaking point at one time or another.
Right.
Everybody's been taken advantage of one time or another.
Right.
Um, where things just don't go your way all the time. And that's where I feel that most people can relate.
Right. So being up there in the north of the north, do you guys do you have the availability to get out there and gig as much as you want to?
Yeah, we do. However, at this point in time, the biggest focus right now is on the album. I was considering doing an EP release, and I decided to go with the 5 single, as it is more of a singles world these days, which seems to be changing in trend, right?
Right.
It's really hard to gauge with all the new things that have happened in the music business as far as royalties and licensing, all the other stuff that goes along with that.
Right.
So I am working on the show. I'm working on members. I'm working on the show. I'm working on the album. Um, I also do production music and that type of thing as well. I try to stay very busy as I'm doing this full time. So
Right.
um, you know, the gigging. Spent probably about the last 5.5 years with a cover band,
Right.
and I just had enough. I had to go my own direction back to where I was. Um, that was important. I have a lot of material in the can, so to speak. It needs to be done.
Right.
And so, I sent you some shots in my studio, and that's where I live pretty much. And that's where I try to do everything.
Right.
Whatever it is.
Awesome. So, you've got 5 songs that you released just this year alone. You're going to finish up um, that album or EP. Can we get a approximation of when that might be?
Yeah. Well, I've got 2 down. I'm shooting for 13 songs or so, and the story will continue. So the first five singles were meant to be in order of release. The first half of the story,
Right.
right? And it goes from an immediate assault to the ears to a more downward spiral into a more mellower, with we'll meet again, and then now it's going to take its upward turn into a very much more uh, evolving, more current style.
Right. Right. Exactly. And I will say that I've listened to I think most of the music that you've released, and it's very intriguing to me because you can almost feel the storyline when you listen to it.
Yeah.
You really can, and it's just and you can't find a whole lot of music out there like that these days,
Well,
especially.
it's good to know the message is getting out there. I mean, somebody's seeing it, right?
Right, exactly. Well, you can't find this type of music, in the mainstream or on the top 100 or the top Billboard,
Yep.
40.
Yep.
You can't find it. It's just the soul and the heart and the blood, sweat, and tears is just not there. You know.
Yeah, that's me. Spill it all out and just go for it.
Right.
And that's how it is on stage, which is really a cool thing because this whole album is going to be pretty based in blood and sweat. So it's going to be a very interesting next year and a half.
Right. Well, I know
especially when it hits the stage.
Right. Right. Well, I know that I'm very excited to see what's coming. I've been chomping at the bit to talk to you for quite some time now.
I know. We chat a lot, man.
Yeah, we do, and we always have good conversations. And sometimes when I talk to you, I've had a really bad day, at work, and there you'll pop up in a message, and we laugh and cut up, and it always makes me feel good. So.
Well, that's good, man. I'm glad, and you helped me out too. So, I mean, and that said, I should definitely give a shout out to Kaylin and Sully and JL and
yes,
and that guy TJ Guns, and say thank you very much for believing in me.
Yeah.
A little flip there, right?
Well, I think right. Well, JL and Sully and Kaylin. Of course, I've known Kaylin since before she came to 365.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, she's a great lady. She and I connected about 3 years ago, and she worked on JL and Sully to let me come on board with my own show. And
that's cool.
Yeah, and lo and behold, JL approached me and said, "Here's your show."
Wow.
And I'm very.
Yeah, and it's great that you're down there too. I mean, the last time I was down there, I was at the Riverwalk. I stayed at the Hyatt down there, right, where the river goes through.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I was down in San Antonio, and it was awesome. But geez, I gotta head down your way, man. You guys got a lot of rock rooms down there.
Yeah, man. We've got down here in Dallas and Fort Worth. We've got a good solid rock and metal scene.
Oh yeah, you do.
Yeah,
you do. I'm being followed by a lot of the guys from around your area. Yeah,
really.
And that's great. I mean, because they're so different than what I aspire to, and it's kind of a privilege, really, because a lot of them like my style, and I listen to their stuff, and I think it's really cool. I mean,
right.
It's great to network like that.
Right.
You got like the Galactic Cowboys down there. You got Hell Yeah.
Yeah.
Or Pantera, them guys, right?
Right. You always got to mention Pantera. So yeah.
Gotta have it.
Right? But
those guys are awesome, and that's kind of where I'm kind of going to. With you'll see some of the styles popping here and there, and it's assimilations,
Right. Exactly. But there's a lot of influences down here, and and I can see, like we talked before, I can see to where they're bringing back the late '70s, early '80s sounds.
Yeah.
And and I've not been to very very many shows around here, but when I do go, there's a few bands that I really pay attention to, and some of the ones that I'm featuring now on my show, that I really like to have that style. So.
Right. Yeah, you do a lot of heavy stuff on your show.
Yeah.
And it's great that I can get to be part of that. I appreciate it.
Well, no, you're quite welcome. So, well, where can we find your music?
Okay. Well, first of all, any place. We got Amazon, we got Google Play, iTunes, Tidal. You can go to my website at sladerock.com /music. Everything's there as well. So it's pretty much available worldwide. I've located it in Japan, China, Russia, Ukraine. So it's out there. It's not hard to find,
right?
For sure. And that's great. That's it. And I think we had that conversation too about what else it takes to, you got to write the stuff, you got to record it, you got to get it right, as close as you can get it, and then you got to get it out there,
right?
And you got to make it known, and that's a hard thing to do these days,
right?
And I don't know, the labels have their channels, and they're looking for new acts. Everybody wants to get that, but not everybody's going to.
Right. Exactly.
It's something you got to really work at. I mean, some days you got to just drop in bed face first and say, okay, I'll get up in the morning and start again.
Right. Exactly.
you know,
Exactly.
that's what you do. That's what I do. I mean, I don't have any other way. I don't really know any other way. To be
Right.
honest with you. If you come up with something, let me know.
Oh, no, most definitely. I'll try to come up with some equation.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey, there you go. So yeah, because labels are no longer going to local venues looking for new talent anymore. They just don't do that.
Nope. They actually watch social media and listen online and figure out what they can cherry pick and go from there, right?
Right, exactly. And so I've only seen that one time in the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years when I went to a show here in Dallas. It was called Heavy Fest, and it was a bunch of stoner rock, and Ripple Music actually showed up and signed the band that night.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations to them.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
I mean, I would love nothing more,
Right.
But who knows?
Yeah.
Like I said, I've had a contract in hand, and I wasn't impressed. And I'm
Right.
sure that if you're, I don't know. There's too many stories, There's just too many stories, and everybody has their own deal. Things are a lot smarter now, and people are a lot smarter now, and people are a lot more wise. So,
exactly.
you just keep working at your craft, just keep working at trying to master it. Do the best show you can, which will be my endeavor. And try to just sound like you sound.
Right.
I've actually modeled my guitars so that, I have a Les Paul. I have my favorite, which is my EC29, and I've worked those things with, the pickups, the electronics. I mean, just all to make the Mesa just go, and get that old school crank.
Right.
And that's my sound, and that's what I love. And there's nothing better than standing in front of that thing. I'll tell you that.
Right. Exactly. I can only imagine because I followed a few bands here in Dallas and have been lucky enough to actually help the band and do some things with the band, and it's just a magical experience. It really is.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but I'll tell you, personally for me, it's a great satisfaction just to be able to do it.
Right.
And be able to keep doing it,
Right.
to be successful at it. Well, I guess that's all in the eyes of the beholder, right?
Right.
It all depends on how you feel about your level of success, or how one feels about their level of success.
Right.
And you gotta love what you do first.
Right. Exactly.
I love to write, and I write from the gut and the soul. So when I feel about something, it's coming out.
Right.
So,
Okay.
as you noticed, and
yes.
So that's pretty cool that you pick up on it. So.
Yeah. Well, I've been told that I'm pretty intuitive when it comes to music. Of course, it also helps that I was a musician myself in high school. So
yeah, well, you are. You're going to be my new confidant. You know that, right?
Okay. Cool. All right. Big deal.
You're the man.
Yeah. There you go. All right, man. Well, we're going to wrap up this interview, but I want to revisit when we come, or when you have the entire thing released.
Okay. That sounds great. I look forward to it.
Yeah, and we'll talk about the more music then and everything else going on, and what's going on is with the projects or whatever else you got going. So we'll just talk.
There's always a lot of stuff. Always a lot of stuff to talk about.
Right, exactly. And again, man, I appreciate this opportunity, and we will talk to you soon.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity, and you have yourself a great evening.
All right, you too, sir.